mute your microphone. Also, type in your name and an affiliation in the chat so we can create a community here. We are going to have a presentation for about an hour or a little bit less, and then hope we'll still have time for Q&A. We'll be doing the Q&A through the chat function, but please wait about 45 minutes before you type in a question because it might get answered during the presentation. The other thing briefly is that I know in talking with all of you, if you work in developing countries, in remote areas, the issue of connectivity is always a challenge. And we know that that is a challenge for many of you who are using WhatsApp and trying to figure out how to change your programs to reach people in remote areas. With this presentation, we want you to think about this to be how to reach your staff that do have connectivity. And think of this as possibly a train the trainer, and how to reach people that have connectivity that can also help you in your program implementation beyond that. So we won't be addressing how to be a little more innovative for those that don't have connectivity in this webinar. That could be a follow-up. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Heba to introduce her team from Avanade. Heba.
Thank you very much, Kristen, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for bearing with us some of these technical issues. That is the beauty of going virtual, and we have to be agile and learn how to live. But again, I mean, welcome to our webinar, which looks at how to optimize your kind of organization's remote working experience. I'm sure you all agree with me that, as COVID-19 hits us, it disrupts all our lives. And it made us, start to rethink, reset the way we do business, the way we operate, and the way we engage with each other. And so thus, as a result, remote working has quickly become one of the necessity for us to continue our operation. So the objective of today's webinar is to help you optimize your remote working experience. And as Kristen said, you probably, it's not only about the WhatsApp and connection through the phone, but more those who've got using the different tools through the internet. So my name is Heba Ramzi, and I lead citizenship for Avanade globally. And Avanade is a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft, and we are the digital innovator on the Microsoft stack. This year has been a very special year for us. As we celebrated our 20th anniversary, we're so excited to be here with you all. We've recently became a member of the Global Washington, as their mission and your mission closely aligned with our Tech for Social Good ambition to become a trusted partner to the nonprofit and the social sector. And you would imagine that we always look for ways and opportunities to engage, connect with all of you and share our experience and, expertise with your community. And we were so delighted when Kristen and Akhtar asked us to join forces on this webinar. So we are all thrilled. We have a fantastic panel here with me today. And let me start by just quickly introducing my colleagues so we can get started. So I'm joined today with Katrina Zamat, and Katrina is our general manager for Avanade Business in Northwest region. She's also, our GM for the Seattle office. Katrina has over 20 years of consulting experience. As you can imagine, is used to work with very large teams in this virtual environment. So I'm sure she will have a lot of tips and advices and guidance to you all from her work experience. I'm also joined with Reuven Goods, and Reuven is our workplace experience lead for the for the Western region as well in North America. and has been very much in demand these past, like several months. And Ruben has many years of experience in the Microsoft technology, and in particular, like the collaboration tools and how to use them effectively and efficiently. Then, Messi Sherrard. Messi is part of our technology and innovation team, and Messi works as part of the global go-to-market team. She has a global, a lot of global experience, and her team is all over the world. So she would be able to, share with you a lot of the experience working remotely as part of the global team. And last, by all means not least, Miranda Hill. And Miranda leads, the global innovation for Avanade. And recently, with a global team, they've put together the, the Innovate Fest, which is our signature summit for innovation. And she had been working with a lot of teams, and she's going to share with you that experience as well. So as you can see, we've got a global, we've got a wealth of experience from the team sitting around the table, and a virtual table, I would say. And as Kristen said, we are going to start off by a quick interventions from all my colleagues. That will be followed by Q&A, so. Kind of write down your questions, and I'm sure that we will have an amazing interactive session. And with that, I will hand over to Rowan to kick us off and start the the session.
Thanks, Hiba. Good morning, everyone. I'm about to share my screen right now for a presentation that is going to be quite quick. Being Avanade, we talk a lot about teams, but what I'm about to share with you is about staying productive while working from home, and that applies whatever technology you happen to be using. So there's new realities of working from home. I'm not judging this guy. Sometimes it could be me. It's not me, but it could be me. But working from home is working remotely, working from home is a new paradigm for many of us. Many of us are used to meeting together, and some of us may be used to having distributed workforces, but whatever has happened, our changing world has brought us new realities. So very briefly, when we think about the new realities working from home, some of us might have great offices, quiet places where we can get our work done and focus, but some of us might be juggling family responsibilities, for the very young or the very old, kids at home from school, and trying to get our work done while juggling all these scenarios. Some of us might have really great desks with multiple screens. I've got 3 screens right here, plus my laptop over there, great keyboard and mouse. But some of us might be perched on the edge of our couch, just trying to get our work done wherever and whenever we can. So one of the things that leads to is changes in how we accept each other and how we work together effectively. I want to tell you a couple of true stories that happened fairly early on. I was working with a very senior leader. We were all dialed in, about 15 of us working from home. And I've worked with this person before. She's very focused, very driven kind of person. And during the meeting, her daughter came up behind her with a toy pink hairbrush and started brushing her hair. And I know that even just a couple of weeks earlier, she would have been mortified by that, asking someone to come and get her child. But this time she picked up her child, put her on her lap and said, "Do you want to say hi?" And that was just like a huge change in what we think about as work. Another small story is a Microsoft hosted event. There were, again, a large number of us on that event. And the host of the event was on video. We watched his cat jump up on the desk, walk across the keyboard, and log him out of his own event. So after a bit of scrambling, he managed to log back in. And, weird things in the new world of work, but things that I think that we've come to accept a little bit and cut each other a little bit of slack. I'm going to talk very briefly about some tips of being effective for working from home. Number one is a quality headset. Noise canceling earphones are really good. They help shut out the distractions. But even more important is a noise canceling mic that stops picking up all the noise that's around you. That can be a really effective way of, making your own cocoon with wherever you're working. Mic positioning is really important. If you put the mic far away, no one can hear you. If you put it really close to your mouth, all your mouth sounds will be distributed, and that's not really great. By the way, a little side note on that, anything you're eating or chewing gum or taking a sip of water, when you have that mic sitting in your mouth, can send out those sounds in a way that you don't even realize. And it's good to think ahead on that and maybe avoid it, or go on mute if you're gonna snack during your meeting. Next thing, sorry, I jumped ahead. If you're using the microphone on your laptop, be aware that your typing noises can be picked up by that very loudly. So learn softer touch, get a plug-in keyboard, go on mute when you're not speaking, because your note taking could be overriding the sounds of the meeting. Be ready for video. This is a tough one. A lot of people don't like going on video, but working from home brings a number of changes, one of which is, like the first guy on the couch, the tendency, some of us, to not necessarily get dressed or get ready for a meeting, and putting a bit of structure in your life can be useful, and going on video can help you get into that structure. Get dressed to match your culture. I think we've all seen a kind of reduction in dress code as people accept this more work from home culture. Lighting is really critical. You got to make sure you're not backlit. This is my colleague, Carol, and this is the way she was set up at home. And I told her, Carol, part of the value of going on video is to be able to see your expression and relate to you better, but I can't see your face because you're facing a window. So she turned around and turned her laptop around, and now I could see her face, and now the value of video was enhanced. So whether you can face the window, or you can buy an inexpensive ring light, these things are available from $15 to $50 that you can use to light up your face. Some of my colleagues have taken this advice, and so now we can interact and really use video to read each other's faces and communicate better. Know your tools, whether it's Skype or Teams or WebEx or Zoom. Know where the mute buttons are. Know how you can join and participate appropriately. I know that on my laptop, there's a meeting mute, and then there's a laptop mute. And sometimes, and then my headset that I sometimes use has a mute button that I sometimes hit with the corner of my chair. And so I'm scrambling. Why can't I come off mute? What's going on? So learn where all your mute buttons are. Learn how your tools work. By the way, I'm rushing through this really fast because we lost a bit of time. I'm sure we'll be able to share this deck later. Good connectivity is important. Make sure that the LAN signal is really strong where you're sitting, or if you can't seem to get that strong signal, get a long cable and plug directly into your home router. Ensure your family is not consuming all your bandwidth. If you have a really important meeting, negotiate with the other members of your family who might have classes or other work to make sure that you've got the bandwidth if you're the one presenting and you know you need to go on video. And explore quality of service options for your home network. I know that on my network, I can use my phone to say, give me the majority of the bandwidth for the next hour. And that gives me a better experience and gives the people who attend to my calls better experiences. Avoid tech disruptions. Find the mute buttons, talked about that. If you're using your computer for multiple purposes, I edit photographs on my computer. Maybe your kids are using your computer. And then you find that your computer gets really slow or locks up during a meeting, which can be embarrassing. So reboot your computer ahead of an important meeting. One bit of advice though, don't reboot it 5 minutes before the meeting. Who knows, there might be an update that takes half an hour. So reboot quickly, reboot well ahead of time. Finally, managing your team ahead of time. Be present. We all multitask on conference calls. That's why video is so helpful, to make sure that you're present and make sure the people attending are present with you. You need to over communicate to make sure people feel they're connected to you, and use video and encourage video. Don't force people to use video. Some people are very uncomfortable, but what I've found as we've ramped up our video use within Avanade is that once 1 or 2 people are on video, some people who've said, oh, I'm not going on video today, go, forget it. Everybody's looking pretty relaxed, I'm willing to go on video as well. So use background blur. As you see, you should be seeing that I've got a background image that helps with removing distractions. One last thing, be ready to mute an embarrassing conversation or to eject someone from a meeting if they're doing something embarrassing. I think we've seen on social media, some people have been caught doing very embarrassing things. Please help them save face. If you go into whatever tool you're using, if you're the meeting organizer, you can right click or click the dots and say eject or mute. Help that person be silent when they were yelling at their child or their spouse. Eject them if they don't realize they're on camera. They'll figure out how to rejoin in a few minutes. Finally, take breaks and have fun. We're finding the intensity of work has gone way up. We're not traveling to meetings anymore. So we are on the computer, looking at the screen, being on camera potentially later than usual, start earlier than usual. If you're home, try and block out that time for lunch with your family. Find ways to connect. Make sure that you're not getting burnt out from all of this. And try as a manager not to schedule meetings over lunch. Allow for fun. We've been having virtual happy hours, and we have a team that does all sorts of great games. We're having a match the baby to the person as they are now contest, things like that. So make sure to bring some fun into that. And encourage breaks, especially if you can get outside, is fantastic. Lastly, cut everyone a bit of slack. Before we'd roll our eyes at doorbells ringing and dogs barking. We're learning to live with that now. All right, so that was quick. We want to do a demonstration of using Teams at this point. So let me reshare. All right. So I'm logged into a non-work version of Teams because we of course keep our clients' information private. So I have a demo environment. I'm going to be playing the role of Irvin Sayers, and Katrina is going to play the role of Megan Bowen. So we're going to start off by chatting. So Megan/Katrina is going to type me a message, and you'll see in a moment. You can see the little dots going here indicating that she's typing me a message. And there's a bunch of indicators that something's happening. I got that pop-up over here. I can see that there's a 1 here indicating that there's a new chat. And because I'm not clicked on Megan, when I go into chat, I can see her highlighted. So sometimes if I've been in another meeting, I could see 2 or 3 different highlights indicating that there's a new message here. So I'm going to say, hi, what's up? And so we can start having the chat this way, and Megan's probably going to ask me to do something. And as we continue this chat, I'll just talk about a couple of things. Normally at work, I would be using video. I can't use video in this chat because I've got video going with you over here. But normally I would have video going, so that way we can see each other's faces, see each other's smiles, and really be working well together. And as we work with this tool, you'll see a bunch of things. I can see that that she's seen it because the little eyeball here, and I can also go up here and do a little bit of a like, or otherwise indicate that I've seen that message. So I'm going to say that I need help with the presentation later today. Later today. So I'm going to mistype. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I can actually edit my posts and fix that. And she's probably good. So she indicated that she's seen it. This can save a lot of time clicking the acknowledgement rather than typing in a response, and that can be very helpful. Now, let's say that I want to just not hit enter, but actually say, specifically, I need help with, and then I'm going to use my little nice rich formatting, agenda, example, conclusion. And I really want to make sure she sees this. So I'm going to click the exclamation mark and say that this is important. And that way it'll get marked with the exclamation mark here. It gets marked as important. And Megan will be alerted that she really needs to help me. So that's chatting. Now let's talk about Teams. And we're using Teams not just as a way to chat, not just as a replacement for the phone, not just as a replacement for other things, but actually working together and collaborating together. So here we are in the Mark 8 project team, and the Mark 8 project team has channels for design, digital assets, our go-to-market plan, and research and development. And here is the conversation that we're having in research and development. Now, Deborah has typed in Greek here. Unfortunately, I don't read Greek, so I'm going to click the translate button here to get the understanding of what it is that we're talking about. You can see here that there's 2 replies from Adele and Diego that I can expand. One mistake that new users of these tools often make is that I might reply here. That is very bad because my reply is disconnected from this conversation. I'm going to delete my reply and I'm going to hit reply here and say good stuff. Something else that I'm going to do, again, we haven't seen each other for months and months, and we're trying to increase engagement and increase our feeling as working for a team. So let's take advantage of emojis, and something that I do probably a little bit too much. I don't know if you agree, Katrina. I love my GIFs. And it's a great...
I don't think there's ever too much of that because it gives everybody a chuckle and it puts a little bit of levity in our days, which may be a little bit heavy on the meeting side.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump ahead, Katrina, now to our example of sharing a document because I think we're about out of time. So I am going to go down here and I'm going to say, can we review this together? Now, I specifically want to work with Megan, so I'm going to say @Megan, and that way Megan is going to get alerted. I'm on a pretty good relationship with Megan, so Megan Bowen is a little too formal, so I'm just going to backspace over the Bowen and say, can we work on this together, Megan? And then I'm going to choose a file from my computer. And it's uploading. And now something that's very easy to forget is to click the send button here. So now Megan and I can see this file. One of the biggest problems that we're working with, and I know that we all experience this, we email a file, someone edits it, emails it to 3 people edit it, you've got to reconcile it. I am clicking on this file right here. It is opening live on my desktop right inside Teams. And Megan is going to open the file as well, and we are going to co-edit this file together. So if I start to add some text, and in a very few seconds, we should see Megan join. There she is. See, I can see her pointer here, and if I mouse over it, I can see her name. Also, I see that she's up here editing the document, and I can go to the location. So if she was editing page 6, I could click go to the location, and I could see exactly where she's editing. So we are working on the same document at the same time and not dealing with that version control. Now, versions are being saved for us, and if I accidentally go delete a bunch of Megan's stuff, we can always revert to a prior version so that we don't lose any work. Now, what's going to happen is Megan is going to go add a picture in her section. I'm going to go add a picture in my section. So I'm going to insert a picture, not a link. I'm going to choose an apple. I like that one. So I'm adding my picture. Megan is adding her picture. It'll take just a few seconds for the pictures to upload directly and then to be shared back and forth between us. But we are effectively working together. Great balloons, Megan. We are effectively working together to edit a document, get our work done effectively, and be productive. When I go back to the team, the document is auto-saved as we go. I'm going to reply. That was great. Thanks. And just like I said, put a little emoji in there. All right. I think that we probably consumed about as much time as we've got, and I'll hand it back to the team. Thanks for your attention, everyone.
All right, I think I'm next up to talk a little bit about managing teams in this remote environment. So as Heba indicated, I run our business here in the Northwest, which means I kind of have two sides of the coin that I worry about. I have a sales team that I manage. So I'm managing people who are very used to being in front of clients, having that personal contact, buying cups of coffee, going out to lunch, and helping them figure out how to do their job when they can't use those tools. And then I have delivery teams that are used to being on site with the client and have to come up with new ways to make sure their clients are comfortable, that they're doing their job, that they're getting the same amount of work done that they were before. So we've taken a couple of different approaches in the last couple of months. And on the delivery side, I think that was kind of our very first one to focus on. We had, as most of us did, it was an instant, almost like a light switch. And all of a sudden, everybody had to clear out of their client, desks and client sites and be working remotely. So the first thing that we did was each of our project teams worked with our clients to figure out what kind of new cadence we wanted to have with them, what type of meetings were going to be helpful to help them feel connected to the work that was going on, what kind of reports could we give them. I have one client where we have about 100 people working for that client, and we started sending them weekly reports that showed what the productivity level was of the team. We showed where some people were struggling because maybe they weren't already laptop enabled, and the plans that we had in place to get them the right kind of equipment so that they could be as productive as they were before. We have instituted rules around people have to be on Teams and be able to respond to chats or questions within a certain amount of time between the hours of, let's say 8 and 5. And when you decide to take a lunch, or if you have children at home and you did take a quick break to help them with studies, they put a notice up on their status that says, hey, I'm going to be off. Here's the time I'm going to be returning. During this time, please contact so-and-so. But it was just a way to be proactive with our clients and help them feel comfortable that, we weren't just, wandering around doing cartwheels in the house and, not paying attention and watching Netflix, but we were still doing our work and we were there to be responsive to them. So it was kind of one side of the house. On the other side of the house, my sales staff has probably had the most trouble trying to figure out how to adapt to this new environment when they can't use all of the tools that they've spent their careers honing. And one of the things that has helped them the most has been figuring out how to connect personally with their clients in a way that they would have normally done, maybe over a cup of coffee in the afternoon when they went to visit. So we have hosted events with our clients where we'll put a fun topic together and just have them come together. Maybe we will have a combination between something they're interested in learning about, like Teams, but then also we'll put a theme to it, come with, your favorite all-time movie and let's talk about, different movie genres or something like that, just as a way for them to decompress and get to know each other a little bit better. We've also we've done virtual, I guess, happy hours or lunches where we all order from DoorDash at the same time, or Uber Eats or something like that, and we all kind of have lunch together. So we've looked for ways to connect that way. It has been interesting working with a team that I'm used to seeing day in and day out, and trying to figure out how to manage them without getting too big brotherly. One of the things that I noticed early on is I always knew what kind of activity they had going on because we were constantly coordinating schedules. We might move a meeting around because they had a lunch with a client, or we started late because half the team was involved in some workshop. And without that extra element to know what kind of activity my team is involved in, I've had to come up with other ways to see what they're doing and figure out when they're getting stuck or when they need ideas. And so I've started, maybe instead of meeting with them, because we're all a little meeting fatigued at the moment, I will chat with them on Teams more frequently, or I will just text them on their phone and find out what's going on. Ask them how that, conversation with such and such client went, just to help them know that I am paying attention to the activity that they're generating, but also gives us something else to talk about other than just the status reporting that everyone's used to. One additional thing maybe to think about that has been a challenge for me during all of this is I'm used to holding meetings with very defined agendas, where we have it jam-packed, we're covering X amount of content, we have just the amount of time to go through that content, and it's a very rigorous meeting where we're moving from one thing to the next. And what I have realized is we went through a phase where we had so many of those that not only did it not make any of us feel connected to each other, but it was more exhausting than it was when we had those meetings in person before. And what we've realized, or what I've realized, is that I need to get more comfortable with silence on my meetings. I need to plan for there to be some dead space, maybe tee up a question and then just sit there and be quiet and give my team a chance to come off of mute, be their super polite selves and see if somebody else was going to talk first, kind of thing, and just give them the opportunity to start chatting and start having some normal conversation, as opposed to just listening to a meeting and responding to a specific directive or a specific question. So as you can tell, I'm a bit of a talker, so it has been a little bit of a struggle, but it's something that we've all been working on, just allowing that dead space and allowing that conversations. And if conversations aren't naturally appearing, then maybe throwing something out, asking a personal question. Right now, my team is going through a flood of new puppies. So we had an entire meeting where we talked about the pros and cons of different dog breeds, and everybody showed the pictures of their new puppies. And it just gave us time to settle down, take a breather, get to know each other, and have the kind of natural conversation we would have normally had if we were sitting around the conference room in the office, getting ready to go out to happy hour or having lunch. So those were my tips and tricks for managing teams and how we've tried to adjust to the remote workplace. I'm going to hand things over to Missy. She has a little bit of an interesting slant on things because she was already in a virtual team. So it'll be interesting to see what has changed and what hasn't changed in her work style.
Okay, thanks, Katrina. And as she said, I was already working as part of a global team, so doing a lot of remote meetings and coordinating across time zones and even, Asia, Europe, West Coast can be a challenge, and that's something that we had to solve for on a regular basis already. But I think some of the things that I have appreciated that have changed in this new world is, one, something that Reuven touched on. It's our ability to be kind of our authentic selves at work and not worrying about those situations that happen where, kids interrupt or dogs or someone's knocking at the door, all of those things. And while we did have a remote team, we had the benefit of being able to still bring people together in person before, and we haven't been able to do that as much now. And I was used to being able to facilitate large workshops of people, everyone together in a physical space. And so we've had to very quickly figure out how to effectively facilitate workshops with large groups of people with the tools that we have, and everyone being at home. And so I wanted to share some of what I have learned, some tips and tricks of my experience in facilitating remote workshops and trying to engage teams, some large and some small, in a remote workshop type of setting. So I'll start with a few tips. One, obviously the technology infrastructure you use is super important, and making sure that you are super well prepared ahead of time. We unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to do that today. We put this together a little bit on the fly, but some of the tools that we typically use, Mural, we use a lot for facilitation. It's a great way to get everyone working together to document the thoughts that you have, and I'll show you a little bit what that looks like. There's ways that we set up teams for workshops specifically, which I'll show you in a minute. But there's other tools besides Mural and Teams. Obviously, there's Whitespace, Miro are a couple of other options that are really great tools as well. I'm sure many of you have joined Zoom meetings or BlueJeans, WebEx. Those are all good alternatives as well. So when we facilitated a workshop here at Avanade recently, we had over 100 leaders from different parts of our business all around the world that were coming together to collaborate on our 5-year strategy. So this would have been a really fun in-person event where people were able to come from all over and connect. And so we had to quickly figure out how to create those same kinds of connections and accomplish the same outcomes with a very large group of people virtually. And so one of the ways we did that, just from a technology perspective, within Teams, we set up a team for the entire workshop. There were channels within Teams set up for each of the different sessions. So we had multiple sessions over a couple of weeks to get this work done. And so there was a channel for every session. Each channel had all of the files that were related to that, as well as an agenda where you could very easily, just click on the agenda to go to the different parts of the meeting that you needed to go to. So there was, large group meetings where maybe all 99 people were participating, and also some small group meetings where people would work together in small group settings. So again, a couple of tips from the experience and how you set up the agenda. Working virtually, you cannot have, a full day virtual workshop. People just get worn out sitting in front of the computer that long. It's very hard to maintain engagement for that period of time. So we typically try to max it at 2 hours. 3 hours is a stretch. And if you do go that amount of time, make sure you give people some breaks. As you saw, in our example, spreading the sessions over time, it gives you actually a really interesting opportunity to be creative with the pre-work. So what is it that you actually need to accomplish with everybody together, and make sure you're only using that workshop time for those things, and do some individual type of work before and after the sessions. In terms of group size, you can have those large groups for engagements like this, where you have a presenter maybe presenting back some findings from their small group sessions. But in the small group breakouts, it's best to have no more than about 7 people if you want really meaningful collaboration between those different parties. So in terms of facilitation, having a clear plan for the facilitation. It's not just one person. You have to have a lead facilitator and then a team of facilitators to support with different roles, having a facilitator in each of the breakout sessions, have a plan B and a plan C. And as we found out today, plan Bs and Cs often get to be implemented. So it's good to have those in the back pocket. Use this, some of the typical things that you would use in any workshop. parking lots, rules of engagement, etc. I'm going to skip through some things here. Just in terms of the delivery, I think some of these things are obvious. Have everybody on video. There are some great tools that you can use within Teams, or there's some just online tools to incorporate polls and surveys and voting to keep up engagement. There's ways to do some graphic facilitation. I'll show you an example of that. And this is one that's near and dear to my heart, but just don't ignore the details. Don't ignore the soft stuff. Don't forget the icebreakers. Use music for transitions. Create strong visuals, and have good energy, just like you would need in a regular session. So I'm going to quickly show you what a couple of these things look like. So I mentioned, we use Mural for facilitation a lot of times. This is one board that we used for a recent workshop that we were doing to think through some retail use cases. And you can see we've organized it by all of the different activities that we would do. You can pre-populate all of this content. And so then, during each session, users can just use sticky notes to add notes and thoughts, and then we can, after the fact, go and organize all this. This is an example in terms of graphic facilitation. One thing that has worked well in sessions where we are presenting to a broader group is to have somebody that's actually facilitating and drawing what is being spoken about. And so in this example, we had an artist that looks like my internet's a little bit slow, but we had an artist that was actually drawing and things that were related to what was being spoken about during the workshop. So I'll see if that comes up, but that was some of what I wanted to share today. And as far as best practices for workshops, and Miranda is going to talk through another example of a really great sort of use of some of these technology tools to engage with a broad audience.
Thanks, Missy. Hi, everyone. So what Reuven and Katrina and Missy have talked about to date are some great tools that you can use. A lot of the use cases that they've shared have been around sort of real-time collaboration with your colleagues or with your external partners. What I'm going to share with you is how you can leverage some of this technology for asynchronous use cases. So sort of on demand, sometimes pre-recorded, so mostly pre-recorded. So I'll show you that experience. It was through Innovate Fest, and Heba mentioned it as part of the introduction. But Innovate is actually a innovation program that we have within Avanade. It's usually a 6-month-long program that starts with make-a-thons, hackathons in the regions, and then it moves into a global innovation contest where our employees can ultimately challenge themselves around real client challenges, and then it culminates in what is typically a summit. And the summit for this year was supposed to be in Toronto in early June. And that summit would have been a 2.5 day session with about 200 or so employees as well as clients in conference-like face-to-face setting. Unfortunately, of course, with the situation we're in now, we had to postpone that event and pivot very quickly to something else. And what that something else looked like was essentially what we called Innovate Fest. And it was a month-long sort of immersion for our employees to really sort of internalize and get trained up on innovation frameworks, disruptive stories from the field, as well as interactive exercises that they could take to kind of upskill on certain things that we wanted our employees to upskill around. For instance, things like learning about design thinking methodologies. So this was the the poster that we had, the program that we had for Innovate Fest, we decided to have a little bit of fun with this because we realized no one is going to music festivals this summer. And so we thought, well, why don't we turn this into a little bit of a music festival? June's also the month for summer solstice, so we could really get fun and creative about this. So we actually modeled this after a couple of, we took inspiration from music festival posters that we saw out there on the internet. And this was kind of our curriculum for the entire month of June. Today is actually our last day of the event, so I'm going to actually walk you into a live demo of this experience. But before I do that, I will share with you some infographics in terms of the metrics that we saw from this. Because we built everything off of the same sort of Microsoft stack, we were able to build experiences on top of one another and also track the activity in a very, very cohesive way. And so through that experience, we ended up creating 40 net new modules. We gamified everything. So we gave points for people who consumed different content, took different quizzes, interacted with different exercises. And you can see some of the numbers here. One of the activities that we did was a crowdsourcing activity around, trends that we as an organization should be focused around. And we ended up getting 750 plus inputs around that. We did another challenge with Mural that Missy just talked about, where we asked people to come up and brainstorm ideas around how sporting events, so sport event organizers need to rethink how they engage fans in this new normal that we're in, right? So knowing that in some cases they might not actually be able to bring their fans back into the stadiums, what could they potentially do virtually and with some of the technology that they have at their disposal? And we got 300 plus ideas from that on the mural board, and I'll share a glimpse of that with you as well. We were able to track that we had, 25% of our global population participate in this. This ended up being very globally inclusive, which was a really positive sort of side benefit of this entire pivot, because as I mentioned, this was originally supposed to be in Toronto, and that would have only allowed for about 200 people or so at that event. But because we were able to do this and provide it virtually, we were able to include everybody within the organization, across the organization. So ended up being much more inclusive. And because the content could be accessed asynchronously, we were also able to be globally inclusive in a way that was time zone agnostic. So you could be in Singapore and access the same type of content and be eligible for the same number of points as individuals in New York or in Seattle. So I'm going to walk you through the app. Hopefully you guys can see it. I think I'm sharing my desktop and not just the app. Missy or somebody on our team, can you confirm that you guys can see the app?
No, we're still seeing your slideshow.
Okay, let me go ahead. Let me go ahead and change back to that. Hold on one second. All right.
We're seeing week 4, you are future ready.
Perfect. Thank you, Ruben. Okay, so this is the Power App experience that we created. It's our Innovate Fest app. And I'm just going to walk you through very high level what we are sharing this week, which is our week 4. We have different modules. So you can see, again, aligned to the music festival theme. We had an opening act. We had something on the main, somebody on the main stage. We had a podcast stage. We had what we called jam sessions, which were really sort of double clicks into design thinking methodology. And then what we called backstage passes, which really allowed people to kind of get their hands dirty around, just experiment with some of the methodologies that we were showcasing. Each of these modules, so this is a video, this first one's a video, the main stage is a video, the podcast, of course, is audio. We're trying to get sort of a multi-sensory experience here, right? We had video, we had audio, and then we had the interactive exercise. What we tried to do is actually steer clear of PowerPoint presentations because so many people get PowerPoint presentations in their day job anyway, and we kind of wanted to steer clear of that, at least for this particular experience. So when I click on into this backstage pass experience, it leads us to one of the design thinking activities. So I'll click on go to link. It ends up going to this mural. It's a mural board, believe it or not, and it's live. So you can see somebody named Lisa's in there right now, adding ideas to this challenge that we posed about sporting events, right? And so what we said was, you know, you're going to get 100 points if you go into this exercise and provide an idea or two. So you can see this has been live for 2 days or so, and we've gotten probably 300 plus ideas. And this actually, we are actually working with the client right now who's thinking about this. And so this is a great way to actually crowdsource a number of different ideas, provide that to our sales team, and they can end up taking that as different options for our clients at the end of the day. So that's just an example of one of the different activities that we had as part of Innovate Fest. I also wanted to show you, I talked about some of the points. People got really, really serious about how many points they were gathering. So we had this leaderboard. Hopefully you can see this, that shows you where you stand in your region. So you can see I'm part of the West region. I'm based in Seattle, right? So I'm coming in at 9th place as of today. This leaderboard is it's dynamic. And so I think right before the session I checked and I was in 6th place. Now I'm down to 9th place because I think a lot of, West Coasters are now coming online, doing their modules and winning the points. So you can see that leaderboard is there. We also did a point summary where you can actually see all the points that you've received to date, and I can see where I didn't receive points, so I can go in later today to go grab them if I want to. So that's kind of an example of what our experience looks like, which is something, again, that we built entirely off of the Microsoft stack. Because we had to track the metrics for the leaderboard, we leveraged Power BI for that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that as much, but that's really sort of the way to gather the data and visualize the data as well. So this is sort of the collective dashboard that we have for Innovate Fest. And I'll just share with you just really quickly some of the insights. We were able to see how many people registered for the event. So you can see the numbers at 2,292. You can see the area distribution for the registration. North America by far had the most registrations at 44%, followed by Europe. You can see in terms of talent by count, which talent communities were the most registered in terms of registration. And then we have the geo distribution through this heat map as well. I think another dashboard that I thought was really interesting was that you could see the rank by region. So if I go here, you can see somebody named Marie in Canada is winning at this point in time, but you've got a lot of other people who are very close behind, and it's really, anyone's call at this point in time in terms of who finishes first. Because we've gamified this, we've also informed and communicated to our employees that the top points earner in each of our regions will get one of our internal Go Team awards. There's one level called Rockstar level, and we felt like that aligned very well to this Innovate Fest Music Festival theme. So the top point earners will get that award. Another dashboard I thought that was interesting was the inputs. in terms of the exercises. So you can see here for the crowdsourced exercise, we had almost 800 inputs, and we could also dive into the another level of fidelity in terms of which regions contributed the most inputs. So Katrina, you are part of the West region. You can see you guys came in as #1 for this particular activity. So.
Woohoo!
Yeah, so what was really cool about this is that people got really, really competitive. And I would say that if they felt like they were shortchanged on points, they actually emailed us and said, hey, whatever happened to, this one thing that I took? There was one activity that we had that was actually off this platform entirely. We encouraged people to go to a live session, and we took tabs of who attended that and ended up giving 200 points to those participants. So it was a very manual effort that we had to do there. And we lost a couple of people through that shuffle, and they absolutely reached out to us and said, hey, what's going on? I want my 200 points. So people got really, really competitive about it. But at the end of the day, it was fun for them. And that seems to be the feedback that we got, is that the content that we were conveying, even though it was training, right, that it was sort of the right balance of inspiration as well as learning for them at the end of the day. Yeah, I'll just end it with some of the feedback that we got from the event and leave it at that. Shall we open up for questions?
Yeah, this is Kristen. Miranda, that was fascinating. My comms director is on this call, and I know she's extremely excited about gamification around all of this. So there's questions coming in the chat. You can type a question to any of the speakers. And I'm going to start with one, since Miranda just presented that I think a lot of us in nonprofits would be very excited to integrate what you just did around workshops or even a conference coming up. But Akhtar Badshaw pointed out that several of us in nonprofits don't have the technical skills that you all have, that you just went through, and even using Power BI to get the data. How can nonprofits either utilize volunteers that know this technology better, or how can nonprofits train their staff? What resources do we have to replicate some of the things you just talked about? So that's for Miranda specifically.
Okay, yeah. So after we shared this platform, and by the way, for the folks who are on the call today, we can do a separate conversation to actually walk you through more of this in detail. But after we shared a lot of this platform with our executives, that was one of the things that was called out, was that this is a really great way of actually stitching together a lot of the tools that our clients already have at their disposal, right? So if they already have Office 365, if they already have, various Microsoft licenses, we could actually light this up relatively quickly. So one of the things that we're starting to do right now is actually build what we call an accelerator of sorts. So something that allows, external parties to be able to get something up and running with something that's been a little bit more templatized and packaged up.
That's great. Thanks so much. And for those of us that are in nonprofits, I just imagine sending that outputs with all of the infographics to a funder and say, this is, or to a sponsor of an event and said, this is what you just helped produce. So yeah, that was fantastic.
Just if I could add, there's a lot of online video training for these tools. Plus there's great tools that make it very quick to create training, create screenshots or create a video of you, even using what we're using today, capture a video of you working through something and being able to share that with your team so that they can get up to speed quickly.
Yeah, and I would also say when we're running a workshop or coordinating people who may not necessarily be familiar with these tools, we build that into our preparation and have like an onboarding session with everybody that's going to be involved before we actually do the real workshop, so that we can answer questions, work through any bugs that people might encounter, and do a little bit of that training ahead of time.
Great. Here's another question. This might be for Reuven. In terms of some technical difficulties, this is from Mirte, who works with people in Central America as well. So the idea of setting up a video call in Teams and mostly as guest participants, she said that she's had a problem where it turns out that they end up in 2 different meetings that are happening at the same time. So Reuven, I don't know if that's too specific for you, but, or you might even say, you were talking a little bit about the difference between Teams Live versus a meeting. If you want to cover a little bit of that.
I've actually seen that happen when a Teams Live event, which is the way we attempted to start this call, but you know, the other part of your questions about guest participants versus inside the org participants, and that's where we got snagged up this morning. I've seen it happen where a Team Live event has happened, but people share the wrong part of the invite, and people are in 2 separate places, and it just requires a little bit of a checklist of step-by-step to saying, if we're building a complex meeting, we need to follow these steps to make sure that we have a successful launch of the meeting and everybody knows where to go. So I don't have the specific answer to like, do this now, but I think that there are things that either we could help with or that you can find online about how to sequence the setup for those if it was a live meeting. If not, there may have been a couple of people setting up 2 appointments at the same time. Would need to look at the specifics of that example.
Yeah, and if Reuven, if you do have a checklist that is step by step, that would be great to share. Another question from Sarah, and Sarah, I think this was covered in Reuven's slide deck that we can share after. Were tips on, you know, turn off your phone and make sure the lighting is good. So if anyone has a checklist for people presenting either workshops or team or meetings in Teams, I think that would be really helpful. So there's
I think the presentation covered a lot of those. I don't have a single one-pager, but that should be easy to create, right?
Great. There's another question for all of you around optimizing file management within Teams. This is from Carrie Thomas, who said that she might be missing something because the files are just in one list or folder and not unorganized in subfolders. Anyone?
So it's quite possible to do that. You're right that by default, your team files area is just a single list of files. But what many people don't realize is that file list is really got all of SharePoint behind it. And you can do all of those things. You can create folders, you can add metadata. But one of the things that Teams has, and I didn't get the chance to demonstrate it, is really great search. Oftentimes you have trouble. What was that document that I was working on 2 days ago? And if you just click the files icon on the left side, it shows you in reverse chronological order everything that you worked on, no matter which team or which channel it was in. That can be very helpful. But that's not your question. The question is, can you organize your documents better? And the answer is yes, you can.
Great. And if people on the call, you don't have your chat open, you should. People are posting more information. Missy has posted a link. And again, we'll try to get all this information out to people in general. One question, again, maybe for Missy and Miranda, in terms of how to create. I've been to people who put on online fundraisers or online conferences, and the challenge of making it more special than a meeting that we're having right now, right? And you mentioned having music and showing visuals, maybe getting totally away from the PowerPoint presentations. But can you talk a little bit more, maybe some tips about how to really create something engaging that the participants want to go to? And Missy, I might start with you in terms of a workshop, right? It's really hard to do a workshop online that's really engaging for participants.
Well, I think it all comes back to the preparation, and you know, the tools are helpful, but sometimes you have to make sure the tools don't get in the way. So it's a balance between the two. But in thinking about the agenda, making sure that you don't go more than say 10, 15 minutes without having something that people have to actively engage in, whether that's a poll or, you move to the mural board and people have to actually, start to contribute ideas. The example that it wouldn't come up when I was presenting because my internet was slow, but I'll share it now. When you do have a session where maybe you do need to present for a longer period of time where people need to be listening, this idea of the graphic facilitation, like what you see here, gives people a visual to connect to and kind of keep them involved in the conversation as you're, continuing with the presentation. So, those are a couple ideas. Miranda, I'm sure you've got others.
Yeah, and I would say for what Missy you've got up right now, one of the suggestions that the facilitators for this particular session had was we did have a special illustrator who was actually drawing all of this up on the board, and they suggested that we pin that particular individual on our Teams page so that while you had somebody else presenting, you could actually watch the illustrator draw out what was being said. So it was just a different experience. It's something that you've probably seen in live sessions in the past, in live conferences, but we were able to emulate that online, which was pretty cool. I agree with Missy in terms of just taking some more breaks than you typically would, I think, right? Because people do get exhausted from being online all the time. And so take more breaks, and then as much as you can, try to have those points of interactivity. So, I've been in a lot of sessions where they've asked us to whip out our phones and vote on something or take a survey. And I think that keeps people on their toes and just engages them in the content a little bit more. So that would be one of my suggestions. And the other thing that I would say is, I think somebody had mentioned setting the ground rules. I think setting the ground rules for people to really stay focused with the task at hand, I think is really, really important, because if you've got folks who are kind of multitasking and taking emails on the side, you're not going to get the level of interactivity that you want in your online experience. So definitely try to set the ground rules and try to potentially enforce those if you can throughout the session.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons to always have video, because people will not multitask as much when they're on video.